I don't even know what day it is anymore.
4th.
Thank you.
The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are our own, or those of our guests, and in no way represent the views of the companies, associations, or organizations that any of us may work for or represent. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they were told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast that explores the many pathways to an aviation profession, the challenges that a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace, and we share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, a professional airline pilot currently flying for a U.S. legacy airline with close to 20 years on the flight line. Welcome aboard Flight 118 of the Squawk Ident podcast, recorded on the 4th of September, 2022, from the mobile Av8r Sound Studios, aka Studio 517, on the 5th floor of the Maui Coast Hotel in Kihei on the island of Maui. On today's show, I'm joined by Alex and Rob. Together, we will discuss the busy skies, simulator shenanigans, overweight landings, summertime weather avoidance, overworked and tired pilots, how to deal with the stresses of taxiing flight schedules, and what happens when you hijack a King Air. All this and more on this, the 118th episode of the Squawk Ident podcast. Before we begin today, I would like to again thank Captain Greg Jones for joining me on Flight 117, Leadership Toolbox. It was an honor to share such a memorable trip with you, sir. Thanks again. In this profession, every once in a while, you get to be a part of a flight sequence that will stand out in your memory, as long as you have the ability to recall it. For one reason or another, it could be because the experience at the destination that was new to you and different, or it could be because of a crew that really connected as a group. Or maybe it was a near-disaster moment for which every time you tell the tale, the fish just gets a little bigger. Either way, hang on to those memories and appreciate them as they unfold. For inevitably, there will come a day that you can no longer be able to sit at the controls of a magnificent flying machine. For when that day comes, ask any old-timer aviator. The memories that you will cherish most will be the ones that you can still recall with a mind that will undoubtedly challenge you to do so. Joining us today is superb aviator and Squawk Ident co-host. He is a former international and professional racquetball champion, a member of the 9G Club, an A&P and avionics tech, and RC aircraft commander, boat skipper, commercial drone operator, and currently an Airbus pilot for Legacy Airlines. The name that we use here on the show is an alias to our employer, a U.S. mainline carrier. Joining us from his home podcast studio, where he's recovering from his recurrent training event from somewhere in Flower Mound, Texas, help us in welcoming our very own Mr. Rob D. Rob, how you doing?
Well, hello. I'm doing good. How's it going?
Doing good. Glad to have you back, and I'm really excited to hear about your recurrent training.
Back. Yeah, I'll tell you all about it. I think everybody can learn from my mistakes for sure. But it was successful. It was a successful event, and I'm good for another year. So here I am. Well, we'll talk about it.
Fantastic. My favorite word. Yeah. Fantastic. And also joining us today is another exceptional aviator and flight instructor. He is a U.S. Navy Reserve's Chief Information Systems Technician, an Embraer 175 pilot for Sandpiper Regional, the alias to one of Legacy Airlines' wholly owned regional airlines. Joining us from the Clarion Mobile Studios on the 4th floor of the DFW Airport Clarion Hotel. Help us in welcoming back to the show, Alex D. Pilot. Alex, how you doing?
Good, Tony. I'm good. Ready to be here. It's been a while since we've recorded, so I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, and you're at work at the hotel. Are you at your own hotel, or are you at a company issued hotel? How's that working?
I'm at a crash pad. I'm at a commuter hotel. We get 4 of them a month, so I'm using
Nice.
one of them. Well, actually, I've used 2 of them just to sit on my reserve days. But I'm at a hotel, not in a bag room this time, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, little more
Cool.
privacy, a little some quiet time. Yeah, good, better Wi-Fi probably. Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm really looking forward to chatting with both of you gentlemen today. Pretty crazy flight schedule happening on my end this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been go, go, go. From the last show, we talked about how I and Captain Jones went to Suriname, did some red eye flying, did some flying into airspace that was a little unfamiliar to us, flying south of the border, south, not quite south of the equator. We're still north of the equator by a
Yeah.
bit, but really close to the equator, flying into a rainforest, dealing with a ramp that doesn't have any kind of jet bridge, or the terminal was basically a building that looked like from the 1900s. I mean, but it was really cool, really laid back,
Yeah.
very small country. Only 600,000 people live there
Mhm.
permanently,
Wow.
and yeah, it's actually one of the smallest countries in South America. I learned a lot because of Google. Thank you, Google.
Yeah.
And
Thank God, right?
yeah, it was really a cool experience. They drove on the wrong side of the road there. It was.
Oh.
Notice I say wrong side of the road because
Yeah, you got to be careful crossing the street as a pedestrian. You might look the wrong way.
yeah,
Get killed.
yeah, a lot of mopeds and stuff, and people, that's because you got to be careful if you're walking on the sidewalk. It's the mopeds
Yeah.
that'll come by and snatch a bag or something and drive off, and you'll never catch them. So yeah, security was definitely on our minds. We kind of staked out the area around the hotel. Security was obviously a concern because we're in a foreign land. I never saw any kind of law enforcement of any kind. A lot of locals hanging out. A lot of people approaching us, talking in Dutch, and actually their language that they speak there, their local language, that was a little bit different than Dutch. And so you don't know what they're saying to you. They could be saying, "Give me all your money."
Yeah.
You don't know. So yeah, security was definitely an issue. We kind of stayed within the confines of the resort. We did venture out and go to a really nice restaurant inside an old fort that was built in the 1800s. It was actually a museum,
cool.
and we went there after hours. The restaurant was still open. They had security at every establishment, every major restaurant or a shopping center. Everyone had a security guard out front. So always. And then I remember the captain told me, he goes, "I'd feel a lot better if I was packing." I was like, "Yeah, I'd feel a lot better if you were packing too." But no, we had a good time. And I went home from that trip, spent a few days at home. Actually quite a few days at home, almost a week. And then I embarked on this trip. What I wanted to talk about today was some of the heavy schedules that we've been dealing with. Now, this trip is a 5-day trip. And I don't know why, for whatever reason, the way I bid in PBS, every single trip I have this month is a 5-day trip.
Oh,
wow.
It is one of the points of contention with the pilot group here at Legacy Airlines. Hitting all the headlines recently. You can see pilots over at Legacy, pilots over at Delta, pilots over at American, pilots. They're
Southwest,
all picketing right now. And they had a huge event on Friday and Saturday. They were picketing.
They did.
They were picketing at headquarters and at airports. And I've had cousins and aunts all kind of text me or send me messages over the past few days. "Are you going to strike? Are you going to strike?" It's like, "No, we're not striking. That's not how it works." We've kind of talked about that on the show here. We fall under the National Railway Labor Act, and it is actually illegal for employees of a transportation company like the ones we work for to strike without a judge giving permission. How often do you think that happens, right? So, but the informational picketing is going on, and there's a lot of issues that are on the table. The number one issue is these contracts. We're flying with expired labor contracts, meaning there are no gains to our financial the obligations of the company, to the quality of life, to all the benefits that we have. Meanwhile, the inflation is skyrocketing, right? More than 7%, last I heard. So if we don't get any gains, it's like taking a 7% pay cut, right? So, and the more the company drags these labor negotiations out, the more, it's beneficial for them, because if the economy gets better or gets worse, they can use that as leverage. Now, before the show, Alex and I were talking a little bit about all these regional airlines. Every single day, there's an airline that has signed a tentative agreement, or a TA, with their labor union. And Mesa Airlines is now on the books as being the highest paid regional airline ever. Mesa.
That's incredible.
And they have a reputation. The fact that they're now the highest paid, that's kind of an oxymoron, really. And then, of course, 24 hours later, a PSA said, "Oh, we're going to be the highest paid." And now Horizon just signed an industry-leading contract. So it just seems like every single day, another regional is trying to outdo the one that previously announced some kind of gain in their labor contract. And why does this not happen at mainline? And I think from what Alex is raising his hand, like, I know.
Yeah.
What we were talking about was when you're at a regional airline, for most people, I think the goal is to move onward and upward up the pyramid, right? So
the most part,
you can make lateral moves. You can make moves, kind of stepping stone moves to a major airline or a low-cost carrier airline, with the end goal being someplace, right? But when you're dealing with a legacy carrier, you're not going to leave, say, Delta to go to United. That's a lateral move, and you have to start all over again in seniority and pay. So there is no end goal. You've reached the tip of the pyramid if you're at one of these main legacy carriers, one of the 4 or 5 legacy carriers. You've made it. So you're not going to do lateral moves. So it doesn't behoove the company to say, "Hey, we've got the best pay." At least not for that purpose, because pilots aren't leaving. They're not happy, but they're not leaving. And at the regional level, they're leaving. They're leaving like gangbusters. And how do we get them to stay? Let's throw money at it.
Right.
Well, that's exactly what happened with us when we were the first ones to come out. It was mainly to really stop the hemorrhaging to go into all the ULCCs. Like you'd talk to guys left and right, and it's like, "Oh, I've been here for a year and a half, and I've already got a CJO over at Spirit, or I've got a CJO over at Frontier." And they're just basically bidding their time so that they can get 121 experience enough to where they can go to
and stay current
LCC, stay current, and then they go to the LCC for about the same amount of time, if not a little longer, to then go into one of the majors. And they're just basically backdooring the back door.
Yeah, and just for those listeners out there that might not be in the industry, CJO, conditional job offer, you can get one of these if you apply to a place and they go, "Well, we can't hire you right now, but we're going to give you a conditional job offer as long as you get so many hours, or once you get 500 hours PIC, then contact us and we'll get you an interview," that kind of thing. That's a conditional job offer. And LCC, a low-cost carrier, low-cost carriers in the U.S. at least, we're talking about Spirit. We're talking about Frontier, and what's that other one? AirTran?
JetBlue, and
JetBlue's actually
Southwest,
Allegiant,
maybe.
Allegiant,
yes,
Sun
they're
Country,
still considered LCCs.
low-cost carriers. So to get it onto a low-cost carrier, that could be a career for you. You could be happy with the contract, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, some people make a career out of staying at a regional. I have some friends that are still at Sandpiper, and they've been there 20 or 30 years, and they're not going anywhere. Why? Why should they? They make good money. They have good schedules. They have good contract. And now their seniority is great. And now, check airman. Come on, man.
So some of these guys are making $800-900 an hour just to sit and make sure that my ass doesn't crash us into the ground on IOE. So
and to be their children, can you imagine? All right, this week you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car.
Right. They used to say the hardest when we got our raises. What's the hardest part about working for Sandpiper? And that's choosing what color Raptor you want to buy.
Oh,
right.
And who's going to get there ordered first, right?
So I mean, it's a joke that we're making a lot of money right now. And one of the captains that I just flew with, he's like, "Man, when I started, I was making $38 an hour." And I said, I'm not trying to gloat, because by any means, when I came into this, I was going to make $52 an hour and be absolutely happy with it. Everybody has to pay their dues, but I understand why these regionals are doing this is because people are leaving, people are finding ways. Yeah. They need people. The main lines need people. And if you can
they're
get
finally
people
at
to come
that
in,
point where they they have to do something monetarily to attract people to the industry and to the company, because up until this point, who would come to work for a carrier that wasn't paying very well? I mean, you did, but the point is that in the numbers that they need, they're not getting the people that they need, because the majors are just sucking the pilot pool from the regionals dry. I mean, I hear there's not even an interview at some of these companies where you literally just apply and they go, okay, we got your stuff, you qualified, looks good, you're hired. We're
Tony,
not even
that's what it was that we were talking about, where you're like, what did PSA just come out with? PSA and Envoy just came out with for ExpressJet, all the pilots that work for them, if you want to come work for Piedmont or PSA or Envoy, that you just apply.
No interview.
No interview needed. Just apply, because those two regionals are desperately hurting.
Yeah. And it's too bad that Roger's not here today. He couldn't make it last second. He was planning on joining us today, but he had some family issues with his grandparents. He had to be there for them, support them. So, our hearts go out to Roger and his family, and hope that everything's going to be okay with them. But Roger, if he was here, he would tell you from experience that he too fell under a very similar situation about 10 years ago when he was working for a company that was no longer in existence. So we told everybody who we worked for. It was ExpressJet, and then they came back into existence, and now they're gone again, which is really bad. I hate to see any pilot, unfortunately, on the street for that scenario playing out. But he had the similar thing. The first time he was flying for the branded flying for ExpressJet, he did that for a very short period of time, and then they ended up giving him an involuntary leave. And when he was recalled, they said, okay, you're going to come back for a week, and then you're going to be furloughed, and we're shutting down. So he ended up not having that position anymore, and he was offered at least to go to another carrier. No interview, just show up. I think it's a smart move if you're the HR department for a regional airline, when an airline like ExpressJet, that is very reputable, ends up closing their doors, giving those pilots the opportunity to come over. They're trainable. They're flying the line. They're 121 certified. It's kind of like getting that big box of cool stuff at the garage sale, and you take it home and you find all this really cool stuff inside. I mean, it really is just like shooting fish in a barrel for your pilot hiring. So good job to PSA and Piedmont and Envoy for announcing that they would hire ExpressJet pilots with no interview. If you're ever in that position in your career, it's not always going to be the case, but know that there are companies out there that will give you those kind of opportunities. Life is not over. The days of Calm Air, where they just shut the doors and those pilots scattered like cockroaches trying to find a job anywhere, they weren't given those opportunities. So it doesn't always happen. But most of the time, at this day and age, in this climate in the airline industry, it does. And when it does, it's actually very heartwarming to see. Yeah. But I did want to talk about my heavy flight schedule this week. This current sequence that I'm on right now ended up flying out of Los Angeles. I was mentioning earlier in the podcast that this month, for whatever reason, I got 5-day trips. And they're all 5-day trips that touch Hawaii somewhere. And they all have a red eye in it. And because they're 5-day trips, which is what the company is leaning towards, they're supposed to have very few 5-day trips. They're supposed to be mainly 3-day trips, a few 1- and 2-day trips, and a few bulk of it should have been 3- and 4-day trips, and then very, very, very few 5-day trips. Commuters like 5-day trips because they knock out a bunch of flight time, and then they commute home, and they're off for an extra day or something. And for me, I don't mind the 5-day trip. But what I do mind is the reason it's a 5-day trip, because it's a red eye on day 4 and you land on day 5. And those are tough, especially when you have to drive home an hour or two in traffic. It's very tough. But this trip started out in Los Angeles, and we flew coast to coast from LA to Orlando. There we had a very quick aircraft swap, and we flew from Orlando to Dallas. So it's more than a transcon. It's a transcon and a half. Now, there was weather over Dallas. There was weather over Orlando. And we
When
had
Wait, you flew from LA to New York
to
or
Orlando,
LA to Orlando, Orlando to Dallas, and that was one day.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is
Been
what
there,
you can.
done that. Yeah.
This is what mainline flight schedules are looking like nowadays. In the past, it would have been one leg to Orlando, and you'd go to the layover hotel. Yeah. But no, if they can get you for 7.5 hours of flying, and it's legal, they'll do it. They'll squeeze it in there. And of course, people were holding. We actually went to min speed at altitude. We slowed it way down a green dot for those Airbus pilots out there. We were flying along at green dot because we didn't want to hold. That big thunderstorm, the summertime typical thunderstorm, it blew through the Orlando area. We were listening to people holding and diverting left and right. Tampa got hit as well. Everyone going into Tampa, they got diverted. And a lot of times they don't go to Miami. They go other places because Miami's already full with diversions, right? So
Fort Myers or
we snuck in. We snuck in right at the tail end of the weather. So the ground was still wet when I was doing my walk around. And we were able to, grab a cup of coffee, grab a bite to eat, some nice some empanadas over at the Cuban.
La Carreta?
No, this was in Orlando. This was at the
Cafe
Cuba or something like that.
Yeah, what's the name of that? That's the Cuban one there.
Yeah,
I forgot the name.
Zuma Cuba or something like that.
Yeah.
I always like going to that place.
Good stuff.
Same vibe as the La Carreta.
Definitely. Yep. Good
so
food.
grab some empanadas, head back to the new airplane, met the new flight attendant crew, and flew from Orlando to DFW. Landed a little bit late. Again, made it after most of the thunderstorms rolled through. And they routed us because of the thunderstorms that were riddling DFW most of the day. They routed us from Orlando to go across the Gulf to pass Dallas, south of Dallas, and then hook up from the west side because the storms were all east of Dallas, Fort Worth. As a matter of fact, Dallas Love was on a ground stop when we took off. Yeah. And
what day was this?
This was on the 1st.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was bad. I was here that day because it was bad that day.
Yeah, there was flooding going on. I mean, we were kind of keeping an eye on this, going, oh, maybe we'll stay in Orlando, But we took off, and we got this, kind of long route. It was supposed to be, this routing going over to the west, coming in from one of the southwest posts, as they say, in the DFW area. En route, we got a reroute. And they had us on a different arrival that brought us in on the southeast post. So it took significant time out of our schedule. We thought, hey, that's great. We'll get into DFW not so late, right? So as they gave us this new arrival, a couple 100 miles out, we started to plug it into the FMS. The captain reviewed all the waypoints, and he briefed it. He briefed the entire arrival, the approach, the ATIS information. We just got it out of the way early. And as we started getting some of our step-down altitudes prior to the arrival, I thought to myself, it's wet. And the digital ATIS had braking action 555. So I said, you know what? Let me run a land app because it could potentially be wet. And as soon as I opened up the land app, which is an app on our EFB tablet that you put in the conditions at the field, the runway braking action, and it'll tell you with your weight, with the pressure, with the temperature, and the condition, how much runway the aircraft will require for landing. And as long as you have more runway available to you, you've done your duty, right? Measure it with a laser, cut it with an axe.
Yep.
And the land app said, you are over max landing weight. And I went, oh, and that little red flag and that little red light went off in my brain, and I went, uh-oh. So I quickly pulled the weight and balance paper, and I wrote down the zero fuel weight, and I looked at the FMS at the bottom where it says it calculates, with your descent and on profile, how much fuel you'll have at landing, and I added the zero fuel weight to the anticipated landing fuel, and it was 172,600 pounds.
Oh, what's it? 172,519 or something like that?
171, I believe. And my numbers might be off, but all I know is we were going to be 1,000 pounds over max landing weight at arrival.
Wow.
So I went, wait a minute. And the captain was like, what? And my captain this week is fantastic. Great guy. He goes, what? And I go, we're over max landing weight. He goes, oh, crap. He goes, I always check that. I didn't, with the change in the arrival.
Yeah.
That's a good
catch. Haven't gotten
catch.
to it yet.
That's a good catch, Tony. And meanwhile, ATC's talking to us, giving us, lower altitudes, telling us, descend to this. And I'm like, I'm calculating. And I go, do you want me to ask for lower? And he goes, yeah, we got to burn off some fuel. I don't want to have to hold. And I said, well, we're still kind of far out. We could probably do this. I'm like, how low do you want to go? And we looked at each other and kind of hesitated. And we're like, well,
12.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I was like, yes.
12. We were like, yeah, I don't know. Like, first we go, 20. And he was like, no, wait, probably 14. He's like, 12,000 feet. Yeah, okay. So, yeah. I said, center, we're at 36,000 feet. Or descending, like 32, whatever we were at the time. And I said, yeah, we're going to be too heavy with this reroute you gave us. We were anticipating the full route. So we're going to need lower. Is 12,000 available? And they're like, Legacy, you need 12? Yeah, it's either that or we're going to have to go do some circles. So he goes, oh, okay. Descend maintain 12,000. Let me know if, you're going to be able to, that's going to work for you. I'm like, okay, we'll let you know. So he opened descent to 12,000 feet and, keep nice and dirty, get it down. And as soon as we level off, the FMGC recalculates your landing fuel. And I had written down on my scratch paper the maximum landing fuel that we can have to land legally, because really that's the only way to accurately calculate as a pilot without going into deep into the flight guidance control computer and to calculate, the actual weight. There's a display, but it tells you current weight. It doesn't tell you what you're going to be. Yeah. So we did the math and you
just basically do the maximum landing weight minus the zero fuel weight, and that's how much fuel you got to have in the tanks.
Exactly. Yeah. So we calculated, and it said that we were going to be 200 pounds shy.
Nice.
And they're like, is this going to work for you? And I was like, well, it's going to be tight, because I then calculated we're already low. We're probably going to start doing more descending. Throttle's going to go to idle, right, when you're descending. I said, it might work. And they're like, all right, turn right to 360. Let me know when you can turn back. I was like, okay. They don't even want us. They don't even want it to be. They want it to be a sure thing. So we get a vector for about 100 miles off course, and we're going now northeast of Dallas. And finally, the captain's like, it says we're going to be about 500 pounds under max landing weight. You think it's good? And I said, yeah, I think you're going to be okay. So he turns back in, and of course, as soon as we get back on route, now they're giving us shortcuts because they want us to hurry up and get there.
Yeah.
So finally, we get on with approach control. They're like, yeah, we understand you're heavy. You're going to be okay. And I'm like, well, we calculate right now that we're going to be 200 pounds under max landing weight. We should be okay.
Yeah.
And we always have options, right? We can throw the gear way out there if we had to.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they kept us on our scheduled path. They didn't give us any kind of short approach. We got on final. The gear came down about 10 miles out. Which was kind of dragging it in a little bit, and we're watching the fuel. The captain's like, dude, you calculated that. How did you calculate it so accurately? We're 100 pounds over max landing weight right now, but it says that we're going to land with 200 pounds under max landing weight. I'm like, got lucky, I guess. I don't know. So sure enough, we're at 500 feet. The call is 500. And what? 500 stable target.
500.
Sinking whatever you're, 700 feet, whatever. So I went, 500 stable target, sink 700, and you're under max landing just at that moment. And he's like,
at 500 feet.
At 500 feet. And so we're like, yeah. I'm like, we had plenty of time.
That's crazy, because sometimes you never know if the FMGC is accounting for that vector to nowhere also.
Yeah. And usually they are. Right.
Yeah. Right. Because then, you look at that and they're like, oh, yeah. Yeah, you're going to be well under. And then you get, then you make the turn and you're only 10 miles out. And then all of a sudden you went from being well under to, 500 pounds overweight. Like, oh, how did that happen?
Yeah. And the last thing you do, and what happens if you're at 200 minimums and you look down and you go, we're over max landing weight. What is the proper response?
Go around.
Go around toga. Go around
flaps.
And then if you
Go
want
around
to do
flaps too.
if you want to do a soft go around at Legacy, it's go around toga. Toga set. Climb set. Go around flaps.
Go around flaps.
Flaps up a notch, right?
Positive rate.
Gear up. All right, select whatever. Yeah, we're going around. We're too heavy. What's the reason for the go around? We're heavy. We're too fat.
Too heavy.
Yeah.
Y'all screwed us up. We're too heavy.
We're too heavy. Yeah. And then who's to blame? Don't start blaming anybody. Just we're too heavy. We were too heavy. Period. End of story.
The way it happened.
Oh, if you didn't give me that vector. So yeah, that was kind of exciting to see that. I felt good about my pilotage ability.
That was good stuff.
Yeah. And the captain gave me a big kudos, a big pat on the back. He's like, good catch, man, because that would have been embarrassing if we didn't catch that. And I'm like, hey, that's why there's two of us up here. And then we went on to go to the layover, got in 10 o'clock at night and stayed at the hotel there, the Hilton, or was it the Grand Hyatt? I can't tell.
The Hyatt.
The Hyatt.
The one at the airport?
At the airport, right? Or you walk across the street.
Yeah.
Right. So stayed there, Hyatt. And I'm checking in, and I look up, and I see a familiar face. And it's Captain Hans. And we've had Captain Hans on the show multiple times. I'm like, bro, what's up? And so it was so neat to kind of see him and cross paths. And I know some people out there, some listeners might think that we all know each other. And, there's 100,000s of pilots out there in this country that are airline qualified pilots. And when you see a pilot that, you have I would say a friendship with, and you don't see them in a while, and you kind of just like their posts on social media occasionally and make a comment, hey, how you doing? You looking good? Whatever. Yeah. But then when you see them in real life, it's just so cool. I looked at him and I was like, dude, what's going on? Did you get stuck here? He's like, oh no, we're 2 hours late. Now it's going to be a short layover. And he looked exhausted. I looked exhausted. You've been flying for 8.5, 9 hours on duty for 14, right at your legal limit. Your 5 o'clock shadow turns into a 10 o'clock shadow. You look at each other and go, you look like shit, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, it's dangerous, man. I'm telling you. I don't want to cut your story off, but my last couple of weeks of flying have been brutal. I mean, they really, I feel very, very mentally and physically exhausted at the end of each flying day. I mean, there hasn't been one day, actually, I should take that back. There's only been one trip where I only had one leg home on the last day, kind of like a red eye, except it wasn't a red eye. But we left, like 7 o'clock at night in Portland and got to Dallas. That's a 4.5, 5 hour flight. Yeah. And, still get in at like 10 o'clock at night. But, I'm exhausted by 10 o'clock at night. It's hard to rest for a trip like that. I mean, for a day like that, but, all the other trips together though are just brutal, man. I mean, you're so exhausted.
And this is kind of one of the reasons that we have this podcast is so that we can get the information of what a professional pilot can expect in today's marketplace. There was a time 20, 15, even 10 years ago when we used to look down upon slam clickers, right? Yeah. We used to say, oh, that guy's or that girl's a slam clicker. We got to go out and have a good time on the layover. What's the point of doing this job if you can't go out and have a beer with your crew, right? And there were those that were slam clickers that they're just like, no, I'm tired. And we were always making fun of those. Oh, slam clicker, whatever. Even Sully mentions slam clickers in his book. Yeah. Right. So you want to read about Sullenberger, and he talks about it right there, I think in the first chapter, about slam clickers and how he was a slam clicker that night or whatever, the night before. And so now here I am, Rob and I at Mainline, Alex just starting his career, and in a very short period of time, he will be at Mainline too. With the way things are going. So he'll be in his prime. And he's going to end up being a slam clicker like us. Right, Rob? Because we're exhausted.
I was a slam clicker on my last trip, but not by choice, but just because of the way that the schedule was. Yeah. And we got in late. We get into Augusta on the first, and we were delayed 2 hours as it was. And I got in and it was like, no, it's time to go to bed. There's no time to go out and, go do anything. Because, we had a 5 o'clock show the next day, but everybody was tired. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's okay. Now it's acceptable,
Yeah.
It's no longer
Like,
looked down upon. Now
No.
they get it. And
Yeah.
I think Netflix has a problem also to contribute to slam clicking, because I think I've flown with many a pilot and flight attendant crew that it's like, hey, we're all together. The whole crew together. How rare is this? Hey, you guys want to go down and grab a margarita and some hot wings or something and hang out? And they're like, oh no, I'm watching my show on Netflix.
Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Gotta finish it up.
Yeah.
The
new Lord of the Rings is on. I've got to watch that. Yeah.
Well, we get at Sandpiper, we get at least the crew stays together and like is on the same sequence, at least together throughout the whole period. You know what I mean? So like this last sequence, I had a captain change halfway through on mine, and then I got pulled off the sequence randomly. We'll talk about it when I get on mine, but like I got pulled off my sequence to get replaced. So I mean, like, you get replaced here and there, but for the most part, the flight crew is the same all the way through.
Yeah, and that's something I miss. We do have that sometimes on the Airbus. We rarely had that on the 737, although it did happen on occasion. But I've noticed on the Airbus for Legacy, at least, I've seen on the 319 trips tend to stay together a lot. So I don't think you guys see that too much out in LA. The 319s. Maybe you do. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it depends on where I'm going. I go through Dallas, and then as soon as I get to Dallas, it's a 319. Some of these smaller airports, yeah.
So that happened with us, and it's nice to stay with the crew, and you kind of get to know them, and it's even better when you fly with a cabin crew that had been at Sandpiper or one of the other regionals too, because
then you had that happen?
Then you're like, oh yeah, we used to always go out, and they're like, yeah, so then it's like, yeah, we're going out.
Wow.
I mean, barring the late arrival and the early go, but if that happens, which we had that on one of our trips, so it was really nice to enjoy the company of non-pilots and just talk about regular life and work in general, as opposed to just sitting around talking about flying with other pilots.
I remember back in the day, my dad, when he flew for Legacy on the DC-10, this was in the early 90s, you would be with your flight crew for the month. Like, you would get your bid, and it would be the same captain and the same 5 or 6 flight attendants. Oh, and I also got to include the flight engineer, because the DC-10 had the flight engineer.
Because that's line bidding, the way they used to line bid.
Yeah.
And you would get the same crew for the month. So like, if we'd go travel with them, like, by like the second trip, my dad's already talked about, oh, my wife and kids are going to come, blah, 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 blah. So by the time like, you're coming on the trip, the whole flight crew knows about you, and
That's awesome.
So, but like, those days are gone. Like, I guess it doesn't make fiscal sense to keep the same people together. I don't know. I'm not a pencil pusher to know all these things.
When it started to change, because as you mentioned at Sandpiper, you get to fly with the same crew for the entire sequence, because if you only have 1 or 2 flight attendants, and it just kind of, the destinations you're going to, you might only have one crew laying over at that destination a night, not multiple crews where they can, have this whole mixture of crews going here and there. So you might only have one crew staying at that destination. So it makes sense to keep you guys together. Because you are line bidding, meaning there is a packet for each base on each equipment, and you have your set number of lines, and you bid your preference or what you prefer to fly for the following month in the computer, and you enter them into the computer in order. So like, I want line number 1. If I can have line number 1, I want line number 10. And if I can have 10, I want and so on and so forth. And you do this, and the computer will award it in seniority order for that aircraft and seat. So the captains will go in seniority order, and then the FOs will go in seniority order. And you'll end up with a line for the month. Well, the flight attendants kind of do the same thing. And whoever you end up with, usually, at least for that sequence, you're going to have the same person. Now, there's trip trading and stuff, and nowadays with technology, they can easily have a different crew for multiple trips for the month. But there was a day when we didn't have all this technology, we didn't have all this ability, and so you flew together the whole month, and you really got, like you said, like your father was mentioning with those stories, you really got to know your crew. You got to know their families. Some people would, like my wife, baked brownies for the crew. So everybody come on over. They're brownies. And halfway through the flight, you're like, were these pot brownies? What happened? No, just kidding. So you really got together and you got to know each other and you spent time together on the layover. And that was the biggest thing. I've mentioned this before, is what I missed most. The biggest adjustment for me coming from the regional to the main line was that camaraderie that I missed the most. Because at mainline, you're with the captain. You'll probably never see them again after that sequence is over, unless you guys really hit it off and you like follow each other on social media, and then you might end up on another trip together somewhere down the road. It could be years, but it's really rare. Well, the flight attendants, they're going to be a whole new crew of flight attendants every single leg, every single flight. And even if you're at the same layover, you're probably not at the same layover hotel, because you might have a 30-hour layover. So you go to the long layover downtown, say Boston, and they have a short layover because they're leaving first thing in the morning, because they don't need the same rest that you need, right? Because they're not 117, they're 121 rest requirements as flight attendants. Now, if the National Flight Attendant Union can put the flight attendant work group on FAR 117, as they've been lobbying to do so now for quite some time, then
which they rightfully deserve to be.
Absolutely.
Yes, they do.
But then we might see a little bit of the logistics of having the flight crews stay together more often. It makes sense, especially at the smaller airport locations where they might not have as many flight crews staying there. But right now, they need less rest and they can work more hours. So very rare is the time where you actually go to the same layover hotel, have the time to go out, not be exhausted, actually like each other, get along, have common ground, and go have a meal or an adult beverage and have a laugh and have a memorable moment.
Basically, what it sums it up to is the company's trying to maximize their labor. And, they have them working as much as they can whenever they have them. And then, thankfully we are, as pilots, subject to the rules of, 121, 117 stuff. So
that's also nuts to me that the flight attendants are still on the same rules we used to be on. And we used to be on those rules.
Right.
Yeah. Where they're antiquated.
Less rest and, more flying time.
Yeah. Well, I think some flight attendants, I think at a Sandpiper at one point, they went to the Me Too clause with the pilot group. So whatever the pilot had, the flight attendants would get on that sequence. So if pilots had 10 hours rest, well, then the flight attendants would get the 10 hours rest. So, but I'm not too spun up to speed on what's going on with their work rules, and that's one of the unknowns anyway. When we're sitting there, working delays at Legacy, because we know when we turn into a pumpkin, because we have all that information on the 117 app. But so you almost have to ask the flight attendants sometimes, hey, I just met you 5 minutes ago and we're in a delay. What's your duty day look like?
Yeah.
Because you guys turned into a pumpkin at like 16 hours or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And they could have been flying all day.
Yeah.
So.
And flight attendants rarely, and this is something I just recently learned this year, flight attendants will rarely allow the company to extend them, because unlike pilots under FAR 117, you can extend for whatever period of time you dictate, up to the limit, which is usually at maximum 2 hours more. So from 14, you can extend to 16 hours. But you can tell the company or the dispatcher or scheduler, whoever you're on the phone with, I'm willing to extend, but only an hour, because after that, I don't think I'll be safe to continue or fit for duty. Flight attendants, if they allow an extension, they are extended indefinitely.
Definitely.
At least at
really
Legacy. Yeah. So they could have flown 14, 15-hour duty, and they could go to a 20-hour duty day because they've allowed the extension. And usually the only ones that do that, it's because it's their go back to base or go home leg, and they just want to get there.
Yeah.
They don't want to burn an entire day off. They've got family to be with. So I can understand that. But good question to ask, Rob. If you're delayed, ask the lead flight attendant, hey, are you guys legal? Or
what's your duty day?
You could have 4 or 5 flight attendants back there, and they could be on different schedules.
Exactly.
And that's happened too, or like the number 3 flight attendant is only legal for another half hour, and everyone else is legal for 2 hours.
Yep.
Yeah. So speaking of these schedules, what I wanted to get to, and this is great detail that we've been going over, why we are so tired lately, why we're slam clicking, why are we demanding better flight rules and contracts and quality of life enhancements to our contracts. It's these issues.
Because I'm old and out of shape. No, is that not the right answer?
No, well, okay, you are old and out of shape.
That plays into it.
Oh, okay.
That's just a fact.
Right. Okay, sorry. Continue.
So, day 2 of this trip was actually day before yesterday. Dallas to Washington, D.C., DCA. Washington Reagan Airport. I hadn't done that in a while. It was really cool. The captain goes, hey, I haven't been there DCA in a long time. When's the last time you were there? I'm like, I don't know, like 4 months ago. He's like, all right, so you're like, I was like, oh, sure. Okay. No problem.
People get so wrapped around the axle about that
we used to do that LaGuardia, the DCA shuttle, like 3 times a day.
That's what I tried to do.
You know? So
I had a smoke event, by the way. We could probably talk about just rekindled some memory in my
okay.
in my brain.
Smoke event. Okay, we're gonna talk about that. So with this DCA, I wanted the river visual. I wanted to do it. I love doing the river visual. But no, they were landing on Mount Vernon visual runway 1, which is just as much fun. So of course, guess what? We were the last airplane to land in that direction. They switched the airport around. Like, damn it. So we come in, and we talk about landings all the time. You can have a really great flight, everything. You were like dodging weather and working really hard and diligently to get better altitudes to keep it smooth for your passengers, and just you're working so hard. And then you come down, you're gonna touch down, and you're like, oh my God, it's gonna be a good one. And all of a sudden, and you're like, damn it. And that's all that people remember.
How's that again? Oh wow.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
It's a bad one. So, and that's all people remember. Right? So, but in some weeks, it doesn't matter how many hours you have. The 10,000 plus that I have. How many do I have? I don't even remember, but it's up there.
I don't even know.
So
you have to add up all those little red books you got. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I haven't done that in a while. But so it doesn't matter how many thousands of hours you have. We all have these weeks or days or even months sometimes where you just can't get right. And yet, it's kind of blurry, but I see you got your book there.
Looks like you got
still
your
keep up
Jefferson professional
I keep those,
logbook there.
I keep those at home.
That's number 2 for me.
Wow.
Ooh, yeah. So I come in and I totally grease this landing. Like, it's a short field. To begin with, you have to run landing distance computations. You have to make sure you have enough runway in your current configuration. And I nailed it. And like, there was a line of airplanes, and I felt totally vindicated of my ability as a professional airline pilot. Nailed the landing, nice smooth rollout. Captain goes, damn, dude. I'm like, yeah, we should have competitions. I should have bet you a beer or something on that one. So it was a turn for us. So we go to the gate, aircraft swap. Things have changed in DCA. Have you guys been there lately?
A little bit.
I was just there 2 days ago, but we kept the airplane.
So Alex may not remember, before there was TSA at every single terminal. So if you had to go from gate,
every extension
TSA had a TSA checkpoint. So if you had to go from one gate to the next extension or next terminal over, you had to go outside of security to go through security again at the next extension. It was a pain in the butt, and it made connecting kind of difficult time-wise. Well, they've moved the TSA checkpoint to upstairs. So now when you come in, you go through a main hub TSA checkpoint, and now you can go from one terminal to the next without having to go in and out of security, which is...
You mean like they do at every other airport?
Pretty much.
But
you got to keep in mind, DCA is a really old airport. It's been around a long time. The actual original terminal is still there, where they filmed Catch Me If You Can and all that stuff. That's all still there. It's part of the JetBlue experience. But there's a museum there. Highly recommend anyone that has time to check out the museum at DCA. They do have some pretty cool pilot uniforms and flight attendant uniforms on display out there in the terminal. Really nice mosaic as well at the entrance. Many movies have been filmed there. Really cool. But so we ended up swapping airplanes and leaving DCA pretty close to on time. And we just couldn't, the whole week, we couldn't catch up. And we left DCA, went into Phoenix. Now, Phoenix was being riddled with thunderstorms. And I posted a few pictures on the social media on Instagram of some of the lightning that I was able to capture by setting my phone up on the dash and just hitting video, and we did our thing, and then I hit stop when it was time to get back to work. But yeah, it was a really cool experience. We landed, went to the short layover, and finally got back on schedule. So the next morning, the captain says, "Yeah, my wife's coming with us to Maui. It's a 30-hour layover." I'm like, "Hey, great, fantastic." So I got to meet her, a real nice lady. And then we get to the gate early in the morning there in Phoenix, getting ready to go to Maui. And two of the flight attendants, the number 1 and the number 3, were like, "Hi, guys, our husbands are coming with us, too." So we're like, "Oh, cool. That's really nice. This is like a family event." And so
I wonder if they're going to send a big bus for us.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry.
Exactly. No, that's perfect. That's great minds, right? So Captain goes, "I wonder if I should call the transportation company to have the big van, instead of the whatever." I'm like, "They usually have the big van in Maui, it's the Sprinter van or whatever it's called."
Yeah.
And so he called and he said, "Hey, are you going to have enough to accommodate 9 instead of 6?" And I'm like, yeah, no problem. We could take up to 10 people.
Oh, that's good.
So it was kind of cool to meet the families, and here we are in Maui.
Awesome.
Yay.
So
what's the weather report? What time is it right there right now?
The weather. Oh yeah, the weather is it's pretty good.
It's sunny with a chance of rain.
That's about it. It's about it. Every day.
And wind.
365 days out of the year.
Yep.
Yeah, I was exhausted. How many time zones did I fly into? 6?
A lot.
Oh, yeah. I go crazy with 1 or 2, and you just went about 4. Well, you went from
6.
Yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Pacific time, East Coast time, Central time, and now Hawaii time. So
yeah.
So now today,
that's brutal.
I got up, of course, when I started opening around, I don't know, about 5 a.m.
3 a.m.
Yeah. Well, about 5. I was tired.
Yeah.
And I went, nope, closed it back up.
It's tough because your heart starts racing because you're like, "Oh, I gotta sleep, but you're tired.
Yeah.
But you got to get that rest.
Yeah.
That jet lag is no joke, man.
Yeah.
I don't know how
what's
those
the point?
heavy pilots do it, and I don't know how you international guys do it. I can't do it.
What's the point of all this? What to expect when you're choosing a career in aviation? Now, if you're flying in the local airport and you're doing some, hopping, whatever. What do they call them? Jumper dumpers, up and down all day, same airport, home every night.
Yeah.
There's a lot of value to that, quality of life wise. But if you're going to go mainline international, you better get used to the disruption in your circadian rhythm. And coffee will be your friend.
Yeah. Or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Red Bulls.
Yeah, I've been drinking those Monster energy drinks.
Oh, those are not. Those
I
are so bad.
got one on standby for tomorrow.
Oh, those are so bad.
Yeah.
Get some pre-workout.
They are.
Pre-workout will make your face tingle.
No, see that's the thing is I can't take pre-work or I can't do pre-workout because then I'll start tingling and have to work out. And if I do that like first thing in the morning, if I'm going to the airport, that's going to be me. It's just going to be sitting there going, hey, are we ready? We're going to go somewhere? Is it today? Today's the day. I'm fine.
The airplane's all jerky. You're like on the controls.
Yep. I'm not endorsed or sponsored, but I love those white colored Monster zero sugar energy drinks. They're just got a little more punch than like a Mountain Dew.
They make a whole bunch of different flavors.
Oh man,
they do
have those ones.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one too.
It's the same one. You can't really see it; it's blurry, but it's a peach flavored one.
Nice.
Yeah, I've had that one. That's good.
You're peach flavored. They make a mango flavored one.
I didn't know they made Pepto-Bismol flavored monsters.
Oh yeah, the white can ish.
Yeah, the white can
that have the basically like Braille.
It's like textured. Yeah.
All of those.
You ought to try it, Tony. You're out there working out.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Mango flavored and the peach flavors.
Yeah. And we'll be right back right after the break. So yeah, let's get back to the show. Rob, training. You went through it. I went through it a couple shows ago. We were talking about the changes to the curriculum. Did you witness the same changes with your recurrent training on the Airbus A321?
I don't recall what you mentioned about it, but yes, it was different. 4 days total time at the schoolhouse. First day was pretty mundane with the normal security and FOM review and what do you call it? FRM is it? No, basically where they talk about human factors and stuff like that. And that was actually, I thought that was a good one because right before the human factors class began, they showed it was about a 2 or 3 minute video loop of all the little incidents and accidents that have been going on the flight line. And all these videos have been captured by, the still cameras that are positioned on the ramp towers and stuff like that. And some of them are pilot errors and some of them are, happened by the ramp. But, watching those videos, you could see what's going to happen, seconds before it occurs. You're just like, oh no, here we go.
Right.
And, some of it is complacency. Some of it is just bad luck. Some of it is bad timing. But I think that is something that is always on my mind when I'm operating the aircraft is just your essay on the ramp and, just be on alert as much as you can be because there's so many things happening. There's so many moving parts, especially when you do a walk around, because when you do a walk around, you're around the aircraft and all the moving vehicles and tugs and you can get lost in there as far as what people can see. And they may not, even though you're wearing a safety vest, but so is everybody else, you're just going to get trapped and you can get hurt. But anyway, moving on. Yeah, I did the 3 days of sim. First day was the first look, I guess they call it, where they retrain you and get you spun up to speed on everything. And I got to tell you, I don't know how long how much I can review, the FOM and procedures and everything like that. You can read that thing for 4 years straight till you get into sim, you just don't know how to do it, and luckily, we get trained to standards and we get, it's pounded in your head pretty well so that when you go out on the line for 12 months and you come back, at least you have a fighting chance on how to do it. But it was so rusty. It was so bad, I haven't done a real go around, in a year. The last go around it wasn't even a full go around. It was, more of the cancel landing clearance, maintain 2000, fly runway heading. Mm-hmm. So we just leveled off runway heading, and just spun up the speed and cleaned up and kept going. So, to have to go through the whole, go around litany, run it through your head, it comes out pretty easy. But then when you go on the flight, in the simulator, and to add a little bit of complexity to it, the captain I had was new to the airplane too. This was his first recurrent on the Airbus, and he's a new upgrade too. Mm-hmm. So he's been flying heavies for forever. So he's pretty senior, but it was his first go around as a captain and first time on the Airbus in recurrent. So as you all know, being in the CRM environment and with all the call outs, there's a cadence to everything, so go around toga, you're waiting for the guy to say toga set, climb set, go around flaps 3, positive rate, gear up, there's a whole almost like a challenge and response thing that you're waiting for.
Right.
Well,
nothing.
I got nothing the first time.
Crickets.
I was like, go around toga, and I'm waiting for him to say toga set. And I go, hey dude, is toga set? And he goes, yeah. And I go, okay, climb. And I'm like, okay, go around flaps then. It was one of the first go around, and we just kind of got through it. And then he's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to say something on that. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a go around. Everybody's supposed to say something.
Yeah.
He's like, wow, in my head, I was saying it, but I guess it wasn't coming out.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, well, I was kind of, and it screwed me up because I'm waiting for him to say something. And I did do the toga back to climb right away because we didn't need all that power. Yeah. So you don't have to wait for him to say toga set before you go back to climb, but he has to at least say it. And then, but anyway, long story short, so we moved on and went on, and I did a single engine go around that didn't go so well.
Oh no.
I mean, it didn't go well. I screwed it up so bad. And it had to do with we were doing that JFK. I think it was the V, is it the RNAV, the 3-1. So basically it's like the Canarsie, an arrival approach. You fly over Canarsie, then you used to follow the lead-in lights, the 3-1,
the VOR,
3-1 right.
There used to be the VOR, 3-1 left or right.
So there's a speed associated with that turn, because if you go too fast, you could overshoot the turn and everything like that. So he called go around before we even got to, we were like 3 miles from the airport.
Oh, yeah.
So he called go around. So go around toga, toga set, go around climb, climb set, go around flaps, flaps 3. And this plane is starting to accelerate. And we go through 210, 220, finally and we make the turn and go out. And I'm like, and he's like, well, what'd you do wrong? I was like, well, it looked pretty good to me.
Except.
And he's like, yeah, look at the speed on the turn there. I'm like, oh. And then I'm like, why is that not coded as a speed in the database? Why can't they put that as a speed? Well,
it's an I gotcha in the sim. I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. It's like they'll tell you to go around. And so what you have to do is pull your altitude and pull your speed. So what happens is
pull speed.
So the airplane will not descend and the airplane will not speed up or slow down. And then you've got to kind of wait to reconfigure until you've made the turn. You've reached your missed approach point, basically, or your visual descent point, either one, when you're straight and over the runway. Now you're no longer on a arc or a what do they call those, curved radials or whatever they're for the RNAV. So you're no longer on a restricted curved path. Right. Now you're going straight. Right. Now you can go toga.
Now you can do toga. Yeah. And that's what he recommended. And that's what I was like, yeah, that's probably the best thing to do is just level off, pull altitude, pull speed, and just kind of hang out there until you get around the turn, and then
twiddle your thumbs and kind of wait for it to happen.
So, yeah. But those are all the things it's nice to see in the sim because I mean, it isn't that you didn't know. It's just there's so much detailed information that you're trying to, abide by that those little things just kind of, it's whatever. Well, that's so anyway,
when you're a pilot, a professional airline pilot at this level, flying a 200,000 pound metal building around, you process a lot of information quickly.
Oh,
and with that information, with that intake, you also have to act upon that information in a relatively quick manner. Not that we're giving out Jackie Chan awards like you probably could have gotten for the whole when your captain did the toga before the arc and all that stuff. And you're going to give a Jackie Chan award for that. But you gotta process that information, and possibly in your case is a great example of preventing unnecessary or undue action until the time is right. And you got to take a breath, slow it down, have that SA that you were talking about. Go, okay, well, we're not going to hit toga. We're going to just follow this lead in until we get to the appropriate spot where we can actually start a climb.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. And then the second day actually went pretty good. I mean, so obviously the first look day was a good spool up day. Got us back in within standards and everything like that. And then the second day was with the check airman maneuvers validation day. And of course, you're going to do single engine V1 cuts. And we actually did second segment engine failures. And single engine go arounds and holds and stuff like that. I got to tell you, I forgot how to do like a present position hold. It took me about 30 seconds to remember how. So I finally got it. But, little things like that, you don't do them on the line and you see it once in the book and you're like, oh yeah, that's easy. But on the spot, I was like, dude, remember how to do present position? I know we got to do a hold here. I don't remember you select the top 1L, or can you just select any of them? But anyway.
Oh, walk me through it, because I don't think I remember that. Present position hold.
Yeah, so you just do 1L.
Okay.
1L is
the
like
top left
is where you're
button
going from.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it'll say hold down there in the same spot as it says hold on all the other fixes.
Yeah.
So when you hit select the hold, now it'll say present position.
Oh, and you push
Whereas
it.
if you chose like one of the fixes down the road, it's going to ask you when you press it, it thinks you want to hold at that fix.
Okay.
So, obviously the top one is the one that's behind you. So it's, so if you select that, it's just going to think that
say, okay, wherever you are, let's hold
wherever
there.
you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are the little things that you don't see in a year. And then we're at 5,000 feet. And all right, present position hold, boom, went into the hold. I dialed back the speed, the green dot, which is about 210. What's the max speed in the hold below 6,000 feet?
200.
200.
Yeah. How did you, but can we hold with flaps out in the Airbus?
So that's what I said. I asked them, I didn't say we were going to hold at 210, but usually they'll say, speed at your discretion or legs at your discretion, stuff like that. And then, he was like, well, what's the maximum hold? I'm like 200 knots. I was like, but there's also this, there's always something in that reg that says, or whatever's the lowest speed for that aircraft. So if 210, 200 isn't the speed, it'll be that. And he's like, but you got to ask for relief on it. I said, well, I'm not sure if you have to ask for it, but if he's worried about it, he would ask. There would be a speed discussion on the hold clearance. So, so he's like, all right, fair enough. So, but anyway, all in all, I made a lot of mistakes, but they were all just minor mistakes. Never crashed an airplane, and big, tremendous learning curve there with the second time. And I think that's what happens with any new airplane. The more and more you go through recurrent, the more you learn. It was nice to see what the airplane does in certain situations, because you do kind of forget, the automation and how it works, because it's so automated, but it's very complicated. If you're not expecting, I don't say it's complicated, but if you're not expecting it, if you're expecting it to do one thing and it does another, then it'll catch you by surprise.
Yeah, it'll be overwhelming.
You know what I mean? It could be overwhelming, especially if you're you're trying to do it in front of a check airman. So
yeah.
But anyway, it was a good learning event.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I'm
Yeah.
using the push to talk mute here on the computer because the staff here has decided to vacuum outside my door for the last 30 minutes. I'm wondering what the hell kind of mess. That carpet was immaculate when I was walking over it a while ago, but oh geez. Well, let's help me out here, guys. So Alex, what's your composite line? Let's talk about you. You mentioned that you were on reserve last month. You're a new hire at Sandpiper, and you're now on a composite line. What is a composite line?
So a composite line is where you're both on reserve and on flying. It's kind of the leftovers. It's technically still holding a line. So I am a line holder after a month of being on reserve, which is pretty damn impressive. But it's basically the leftovers that people don't want after they get their real lines, and they drop and swap and trade and do all the line holder stuff. And then they have all these extra trips, and those extra trips fill into composite line holder schedules. So that's what I've gotten. I had a 3-day trip the start of the month. I came in on the 1st and went to Augusta, Georgia after that night, but we were delayed just like everybody else was that day in Dallas. Went to Augusta, overnighted, then to DCA. I had my first experience into DCA, which was pretty awesome. My captain, since it was my first time going in there, he took the leg going in there. Just so I could see it for the first time and kind of realize like, holy crap, like you're making a 25-degree bank turn 300 feet above the runway.
So you did
just before you're going to land.
Yeah. Runway 19 then.
Yeah, we did the river visual. We got to do the river visual instead of the Mount Vernon, whatever. So, but we got to do that. And then I did a quick swap out of DCA and captain swap out of DCA. Went to Northwest Arkansas, overnight in Northwest Arkansas, and then came back here the next day. And I've been on reserve yesterday or today, and I'll be on reserve tomorrow. So
nice.
But yeah, it's interesting because you actually get to fly with occasional reserve sits here and there, and like I actually have a line. I actually can like build a schedule and not have to worry about coming out and sitting in a hotel for very long.
Yeah, and forgive me.
I used to like hybrid lines because you still had all the benefits of a line holder, but you did have a couple of those reserve days sprinkled around in your schedule, and sometimes they never used you. So those were just extra days off. Now in your case, obviously, because you're Californian and you got based in Dallas, you got to probably be in place to to get a possible assignment, but yeah, it's nice to have a composite line because you get the best of both worlds, and you can trip trade and still do all the stuff that a regular line holder does. Yeah. And then your trips are all new too, because like you get all these different trips that just kind of get thrown on your schedule. So
I used to play that game where you bid for a trip on your day off in open time the day before your reserve. Most of the time they'd say, nope, sorry, you can't do it. You have reserve days. But sometimes they'd go, yeah, okay, we'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Well, and I tried that when I came off of my XNA run yesterday, and there was a open trip to Monterey, which had a lost day. Monterey, Mexico, not Monterey, California. And it had a lost day in Monterey, but I wasn't able to get it because they told me I needed to do something in the computer system, put myself on some list that they didn't know how to do it. So I called the pilot help desk and they didn't know how to do it. And the guys down in the crew room didn't know how to do it. So I just said, F it. Yeah. Oh. I didn't know it's the makeup list or something like that.
There's a DEX code for the put yourself on the makeup list. And I think you could do it in Av8r's too, the automated system.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Option 9.
I don't know how to.
I think it is.
I think you're right.
For us.
And the funny thing is this, that although the menus might be slightly different between carriers, the system that the wholly owns for Legacy that they use is the same system that Legacy airline pilots use for the most part with those. So like our phone tree is almost identical. The crew scheduling phone tree is identical. So putting yourself on and removing yourself from makeup lists and sick lists and all that kind of stuff. A lot of it carried over for us, and which gave us flow through pilots a little bit of a benefit. And I could remember sitting in new hire class and the pilots that were coming from other carriers, or the pilots that were military pilots that were coming over from the military, they were lost. They were like, wait, how do you do this? How do I list for a flight? And you could see the panic on their faces. Like, when you're not going to teach us this stuff? So yeah, we had a couple of study sessions to kind of review the basics. And I'll tell you, you're going to learn as whoever's vacuuming outside my freaking door.
They're doing a great job, by the way.
They're like right outside the door, wonderful. And then it turns off, and then
be the cleanest hotel.
I unmic,
ever.
And then it turns on again. It's like, what the? Hey, I'm doing a podcast over here. Come on, man.
I think they heard that some guy came in with a broken ankle, so that they needed to make sure they got all the sand out from the hallway when he came in, because
Dude, I don't know.
So it must be all the poke bowls sitting out there in the hallway.
Yeah, that's what it is. It was
the
guy carrying the poke bowls with the sand and the broken ankle that he just,
There you go.
Do you hear this?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We can hear it.
They're really going at it.
It sounds like they're in the, not even outside your door. It literally sounds like they're in the room.
I told my captain I was recording a podcast. I bet you, he goes, here's $20. Go outside his door with the vacuum cleaner and sit there for 2 hours.
Jeez.
But no, so I mean, it's the nice thing is at least like I can talk to you guys about like, on CCI, how do I be able to access this? Or, through some of the similar apps. Obviously, remember when I was in San Diego and like, hey, what's the code for the crash room door or whatever?
Get the door.
You're like, oh, just look on this. I'm like, I don't have that option, but
Yeah.
But at least we have some of the similar stuff, and merging over eventually when I move up to the big leagues.
Yeah, and that's a big advantage that you have, that any wholly owned pilot has coming over. I think we've talked about this before, is just that whole, it's not seamless, but it's a very, very easy transition over to mainline side with, how to navigate through JetNet and, the manuals and, codes and listing, non-rev, everything it's pretty much exactly the same.
It's funny because the system that my dad used really hasn't changed to what you guys have, to what we have.
It's the same system.
Little nuances. The little nuances of Sandpiper versus Legacy, you know what I mean? Like the codes and stuff like that for what we do. But, it's nice on that aspect. I think Tony's gonna go
Tony's gonna go yell at a cleaning lady. Hey, will you shut this thing off? I'm trying to get some sleep in here. I got a red eye to fly tonight and you're ruining it. I'm gonna have to call fatigue.
Well, that's the little Lego guy commercial, or the little Lego guy YouTube video where he gets in from the red eye.
Yeah, work. Contract.
It's funny. I laughed at those when I was, before I really kind of understood a lot of that stuff. But now it's like, I instantly, like, all those little work things. Like my captain that I flew with on the first sequence before we captain swapped to DC, he was kind of like that one captain that like, so do you enjoy stuff? do you like this? It took him
Hollandaise. Isn't that a sauce?
So what do you think of the contract?
Section 6 screwed me. God.
And that was kind of him. He was kind of just like I'm not going to say a stick in the mud, but he, like, the first day he definitely, like, was a stick in the mud, and then the next guy that I got in DC, like polar opposite, like came in and like instantly we were joking, like instantly we were laughing and having a good time. And like, I'm not going to say the captain sets the tone in the cockpit, but I mean, it kind of really sets the tone in the cockpit, especially for a new hire,
Yeah. Once you get past that new hire phase, then you can start telling them off sometimes.
I'm sure that'll go over great.
Yeah, when those probationary reports stop printing out at the bottom of the release, how do you do that now? Because we don't print releases anymore.
No, the captains get electronic.
You have to go
ones.
online.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you go online and do it. Yeah. I had one of my captains who, like, we got along really well. And I was like, you mind writing a probationary report on me? He's like, no, not at all. How do I do
it? By the way, I don't know if you noticed,
somewhere.
I got up out of my seat and I walked over to the door and I went outside my hotel room. I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? The guys got this huge machine out there. They're scrubbing the carpets. They're cleaning the carpets.
Oh, they're doing that whole thing.
So I can't go out there and go like, dude, been vacuuming the same.
You tell them you got a red eye tonight.
Well, I will be taking a nap after this. After I go get a brace for my ankle and drink some chamomile tea, light some candles, and set the mood.
Sounds like Tony's got a nice romantic.
Put some rose petals in the bathtub.
That sounds good, Rob. I might do that. I might take a bath.
Lavender.
Bubble bath. I'm gonna get some bubble bath. The ABC store.
Hey, listen.
Some Hawaiian.
Don't knock it until you try it. Let me tell you.
Like, what are you doing? I'm just taking a bubble bath. Getting ready for my red eye tonight. Yeah. Oh yeah. Play some Marvin Gaye.
Oh God.
All right. Well, let's please, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on.
Yes, let's please. Yeah,
we're going down.
We're going downhill fast. She's going down. Speaking of going down, so yesterday I was sitting there in the lobby. I went down to the lobby in Phoenix a little early because I wanted to grab a cup of coffee, other than the crap that's in the hotel room. And I'm sorry that stuff just isn't that good. So there was a Starbucks in the lobby. Not that Starbucks is anything good, but so I got that, and I got a breakfast sandwich, and I'm sitting there in the lobby, and I'm actually taking down some show notes for this show, and communicating and sending text messages out to all the guys here, and to say, hey, what are our schedules like? When can we do this? And on the TV over my head was live breaking news, and allegedly someone stole an airplane from an airport in Mississippi, flew it around for 5 hours, called 911, told them that they were going to crash this airplane into the Walmart. They evacuated the Walmart. They actually evacuated 2 townships. And there are some other pilots that were speaking with him over the radios, trying to talk him down, get him not to do this. He posted some things online. It's just one of those things that it's unfolding. And as a professional aviator, you're sitting there in disbelief that this is happening. And you ask yourself, why does this keep happening? We saw this happen years ago in Seattle when a ramper stole a Q400 turboprop and did the same thing, basically.
Yeah.
So it leads us to the question of, how do people with mental health issues gain access to aircraft? Before we get into that and ask those questions, let's listen in on what was reported.
This person on board this plane came so close to a successful landing, according to Tupelo police. They were on the phone with this person on board, and they were able to connect him with negotiators over the phone, police negotiators. And then the police brought in, according to their most recent accounting, another pilot to try and talk this person flying this stolen Beechcraft King Air back to the Tupelo Regional Airport. And he came within 100 feet, police say, of making a successful landing, but then added the power back in and went back around. That is when the pilot of this stolen plane flew to the northwest and continued on. Police had a gap there where they were not able to remain in touch, according to what federal authorities tell me, a government source tells me. They lost touch via phone with the person on board this plane. And then that is when the plane, they think around that same time, it was running out of fuel around 10 a.m. Central Time, crash landed into a soybean field. We have heard that the plane is mostly intact. Witnesses in Gravestown, Mississippi, describe that the person on board this plane came out with his hands up and then was immediately detained. It's so interesting, Sarah, possibly the best possible scenario, the best possible outcome of all of this. Nobody on board seriously hurt. Nobody on the ground seriously hurt. This person who stole this airplane was a lineman at the Tupelo Aviation Facility. He's a fueler, meaning he fuels airplanes. And police also said the plane was fueled the night before. So they knew eventually it would come close to running out of fuel, but they were able to make contact with this person again via phone, in which he informed police he was on the ground and the incident was essentially over.
It is pretty incredible, the outcome of this, that he was just 100 feet off the runway. He is now being charged with grand larceny and making terroristic threats.
Get him out of here. Because you'd be in jail.
Wow. Yeah.
Let me pause this.
Yeah, that's a whole wow.
That's crazy.
And we talked about airport security. We've talked about when you see something, do something. A little bit different than what we're used to hearing. You hear see something, say something, and we say see something, do something. Not the first time a lineman has taken an airplane, stolen an airplane, made terroristic threats like this. I'm going to crash this plane. Said goodbye to their family. Thankfully, in this scenario, it all played out. I was watching it live. That was, by the way, a CNN news report. I'll put a link in the show notes for those that want to, dive a little bit more into the story. But, it hit a commercial airline or an airport like LAX or Dallas. The restrictions and security that's in place and the cameras everywhere. I've never seen an unauthorized person walking around on the ramp.
No.
I've never seen that. But with general aviation and even in the corporate aviation side, there are security measures in place, but sometimes it's just a key code lock on the fence. like at your old airport, Alex, in Riverside. They're just
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, and
off.
1, 2, 3, 4, and turn.
We used to do Discovery and Groupon flights, and we'd give people the gate code that wouldn't change, so they could come in and go walk through to our flight school. So I mean, you can't tell me these people,
right?
Yep.
So how important is security even at these small airports? And I think it's majorly important, because this could have ended up in a major disaster. Also, as a pilot, we go through so many certifications and exams and checks per se with our employers, with the FAA, in order to do this job. But what about the dude or the gal that's fueling your airplane? I mean, we've all done those walk-arounds like Rob was mentioning, and we know what's going on out there. And are they checked out? Are they all, in it to be one with the company and do the right thing, or do they have a nefarious motive that they just one day says, girlfriend broke up with them, they lost their dog, and now they're pissed off because they got their car repossessed, and now they're working at the airport pissed off, and they just snap.
Yeah.
Well, they should have obviously checks and balances for obviously the rampers and everybody that's out in the major airports and stuff like that. But I know for at least the smaller airports, like if you wanted to go work as a line service guy up at, Joe Bob's line service, you don't need checks and balances and stuff like that. You just need to go apply. And if you meet their criteria and pass their interview, you get the job. And now you have full access to the ramp, plus fuel trucks and all that stuff. So, I mean, the security for smaller airports is not what it is at the big level. I mean, yes, there is, but it's not the same. Let's put it that way. It's not the same of what it is at the larger airports.
Yeah. And there's good and bad with that too, because we've talked about this before on the podcast, where the beauty of GA and being able to walk up to the runway with your kids and have a handheld radio scanner and listening to the airplanes take off and land, and having lunch out there on the hood of your car watching airplanes go by. I mean, that's what it's all about. If you can share that moment with your family, with your children, with the next generation, even with, if you want to be a mentor to have a Big Brother program and take a kid out there that might not ever be exposed to this kind of lifestyle, you're doing a great thing. You're doing a great service. And it's hard to say we need more security and still have the ability to get into that passion for aviation and have the ability to sit there out on the ramp and watch airplanes take off and land. So there's a balance to be had. The question is, how do we prevent this kind of thing from happening and still not restrict general aviation to the people that really are passionate about it?
Yeah.
Well, and I know you said it with obviously mental health and pilots and stuff like that, but this is two rampers that, if we're talking about the Horizon Air one and the Q400, and then obviously this guy in the King Air, they're rampers. They're not pilots, so they're not going through the same, I wouldn't say screenings, right? Because I mean, when we go for a medical, which I have mine coming up next month or this month, but they're not going through those screenings that we go through. They're going through background checks. Maybe a background check.
But a ramper doesn't know how to operate a turboprop airplane unless they are a pilot. Of some sort.
I told you could do anything watching YouTube.
Oh yeah. No, seriously. Like they have people post videos all the time of like how to start a A380 from flight sim. So if you can find,
and then being a ramper out there, you're around it all the time. So you kind of, if you're out there, a lot of times they're already, have that, I wouldn't say geeked out about it, but they've got that aviation interest. So they're probably gonna, want to learn how to do something anyway. So they probably watched the video on it or watched another pilot or asked them. So there's a little bit of knowledge probably already gained. I mean, I'm obviously speculating, but
some rampers can know how to start the airplanes because they may have to move them from the ramp to a hangar, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they have to like at least power it on to move it to turn off the parking brake or something.
Very true.
Yeah. One of the fuelers that used to be at a Chandler is now a senior FO to us. at a legacy. But he was he was just running around fueling airplanes up. I mean, you'd top off the fuel, he'd show up in that little tiny fuel truck and climb up on the 182 or the 172 that we had and top off the fuel. And here he is. Now he's a pilot. And this guy if you look at the way he's flying that airplane, it looks like he has some kind of stick and rudder, experience, whether it be a flight simulator or, real-time flying. I mean, even with the Seattle incident with I think it was a mechanic that stole the airplane and went for a joyride in the Q400 before, killing himself. But, he's flying that airplane around and he was doing pretty good. I mean, some of the stuff he was doing, I wouldn't do in an airplane. I mean, but, watching that King Air fly around in that video for a short period of time, and obviously it looks like it was just a loop. They kept looping the same, 10-second image or something like that. But it looks like he was doing a fairly decent job, and he knew how to go around.
Yeah,
at 100 feet.
I was watching.
If I did a better go around than I did in my recurrent, so
should ask him for some. Hey, can I have some pointers? No, I'm kidding.
But seriously, though, I mean, the mental part of not only of aviation but society, it troubles me. I mean, it's not just aviation; it's everywhere. But
there's a lot of noise out there.
It's going to happen.
Stressors, a lot of noise.
And
that's going to create a lot of these incidences are going to happen. I remember reading an article after the flight attendant for JetBlue said, "F this job, I'm out of here." Opened a couple beers, drank them, popped the 1R door, had the slide go out on the ramp, and then just jumped out of the airplane because he was sick and tired.
And he did what probably every aviation employee wanted to do, and he did it in the most classical way. But that was a mental thing, right?
Yeah, and I remember reading that article, and it said that we're going to start seeing more and more of these kinds of instances at this level in not just aviation but everywhere in professional career fields, because the stress, the productivity demands have increased so much. The stress level for everyone to be more productive, on it, more connected, more just it's too much for people sometimes.
But think about what we just went through with the pandemic. There was a lot of stress put on people, and then you require them to put on a face covering and climb into an aluminum tube and sit next to people that they don't know, and everybody's under the same stress and duress. And that could drive a person crazy if you're not conditioned for it. And you saw a lot of people literally lose their minds. And we had it was unprecedented for the industry.
So many, I wouldn't say fights, but like so many more people getting like YouTube famous because they were not wanting to wear their mask or fighting an air crew or this, that, and the other, because we were crammed in a home told to be in a home for so long, and then
so whatever set that person off is some kind of psychological, they reach some sort of psychological tolerance, and then they snap. And happened to the JetBlue flight attendant with the 2 beers and a slide. Obviously it looks like it happened to the C-90 person, and thankfully nobody got hurt, nobody's dead. But the troubling thing to me is that it's almost undiagnosable. You know what I mean? You don't know when. I mean, there's no real doctor that can sit there during an evaluation when you're going to get your FAA medical or something like that can say, "Yep, that guy's crazy," unless he flat out exhibits, all the
signs,
symptoms of somebody who's crazy. And during my recent physical, the only thing they could do is ask you questions. Hey, you feeling okay? You getting enough sleep? You stressed? How's life?
Yeah.
You happy?
There's a reason that the your FAA medical examiner is asking you these questions. It's not because he's trying to be friendly to you. Trust me, it's not.
Yeah.
The reason he is making this small talk with you is to see how you react. And it's a small part of their evaluation. They check your blood for diabetes. And that kind of thing. They're not checking to see if you're smoking hashish or taking pot brownies the night before. They're just checking to see if your blood sugar levels, your diet, if you're diabetic or something like that. They check your vision, they check your hearing. If you're over 40, they're checking your EKG, looking at your heart. Of course, they're doing all the, heartbeats, lungs, that kind of thing. Any new tattoos, you got to tell them because they want to be able to identify your body from the wreckage is what I was told. And so all these things they're asking you, and they're also asking you, like, how's flying, how's this and that, because they want to see you go, oh, yeah, I got no reckon to kill nobody. I mean, they want to make sure you're not sling blading it, Alex was mentioning he hadn't heard about the JetBlue incident. It happened in 2010. I don't know. What were you in grade school back then?
I was in my second year in the military. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I have found a little tidbit from that incident. Let's hear what YouTube has to say about this.
Is he a folk hero or a hothead? Opinions are divided on the actions of JetBlue flight attendant Steven Slater. Many people, including fellow flight attendants, sympathize with him.
That one situation is so annoying. Why a passenger can't sit in the seat until you're told the seatbelt sign is off, you're free to get up, you're free to get your luggage. And he was hit in the head.
Slater's lawyer agrees.
So you're trying to do your best to provide safety for passengers, and you have rudeness and lack of civility among the traveling public.
But prosecutors say Slater is the dangerous one. After the plane landed, the 38-year-old flight attendant is accused of cursing out a passenger, grabbing some beer, pulling the inflatable emergency slide, and going home to his boyfriend. The pilot radioed it in.
Can you give me the location of the slides that deployed?
It's the R1 slide. It was intentionally deployed.
Slater's lawyer says no one was in danger.
Absolutely not. There was no way. There's a window, there's a procedure. There was nobody below that slide.
Slater's bail was set at $2,500, but he remains in this New York City prison. Outside Slater's home in New York City, neighbors say he did what a lot of people think about doing, but don't.
I remember times when I came home, put my head under the pillow and cried and said, I'm never going back there again. But the next day comes and you go back there. Why? Because you have a job to do and you do it. And it's nice to feel appreciated for what you do in your job, but unfortunately, that doesn't come with most of the jobs in the world anywhere, I guess.
On the other side of the country, out in Thousand Oaks, California, Slater's mother is dying of lung cancer, and friends say the son, Steven Slater, has been under a lot of stress. Ted Shaffrey, The Associated Press, reporting from New York.
Jeez.
I'll put a link in the show notes on that.
Yeah.
That happened.
Take a look at the one I just sent you too after that, because it's a very similar situation.
Is it a different...
JetBlue, it's a different situation. JetBlue, where the captain raced up and down. This is from, this happened in 2012. JetBlue flight captain raced up and down the aisle screaming and pounding on the cockpit door, shouted, first Iraq, then Afghanistan, now this.
Yeah, let me midair meltdown. Okay.
Well, while Tony's pulling that up, we can't also forget about the German wings incident that happened with mental health. And obviously this new Air China stuff, which they're leading to believe is mental health, intentional plummeting. Yeah. So,
it's out there.
More and more, it's starting to get recognized. I mean, you got to think, you guys were, Tony, you were just talking about your schedule of 5 days, basically. Mm-hmm. Granted, you've got this nice 30-hour layover in Maui,
which makes up for it. You kind of regroup and
but you're regrouping from your, basically right up to your legal limit of flight time on day one.
Right.
That you can't tell me that stuff doesn't play into people and how they react and handle stuff, because
we're people.
Let's figure
we're human. We have feelings. I mean, I say that kind of in jest, but it's also very serious. I mean, we all have battles that we're fighting at home and in life. And then we're expected to just compartmentalize and come to work and operate at our peak physical and mental capacity, to be on it, to be razor sharp. Not just pilots, but flight attendants alike. Like you said, it's very taxing. And then you add all the pandemic stress and the people being rude. And I think it's, like I've said this before, we don't hear the golden rule, being spit out at every single kid at school every day anymore. Do unto others, respect your elders. Now it's the opposite.
I don't even think my kids would know if you told them, hey, what's the golden rule? Like, I don't think my kids would know nowadays what the golden rule is.
And this is what the outcome from that is that now that we no longer stress the, respecting others and things as much, we don't have these slogans that are very important. There's a reason that advertisers spend millions on jingles, is because you remember those jingles for the rest of your life. I mean, I'm not that old. I'm 47 years old. I think I feel young. I feel with it. But I still remember jingles like pop, pop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is.
Oh, what a relief it is.
I mean, that's like 1950s and 60s jingles, or rice aroni, the San Francisco treat. See, we remember these jingles.
To all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Where's the hamburger?
One of my favorite ones. My bologna has a first name, it's OSCAR, and it also has a second name, it's MEYER. Oh, I like to eat it every day.
So, and if you'll ask me why, I'll say
Oscar Mayer has a way, BOLOGNA. So we have these jingles that advertisers spent millions on. Why? Because they stick in your head. They're great for business, right?
Yeah.
But what about the business of our society? We need to have these jingles back. We need to have those PSAs that run on television every day around after school time. Oh, but what's this? We don't watch television. We watch YouTube. We watch Netflix. We watch streaming services that don't have advertising. Okay, that's great. I hate advertising too, just like the next guy. Why does it always have to be louder? But all these stresses put them into a person who's just shown up trying to do their job, and now you got some rude passenger or rude co-worker sometimes that are just pushing your buttons to the point of you're like, F this, I'm out of here. And that's what's happening. Now, Rob, you mentioned this JetBlue pilot. I do remember this story. I found a link here. Let's just play a little audio just to kind of remind everybody what happened.
Yeah, I don't remember everything, but I remember that when you started talking about it.
That breaking news word of a terrifying scare at 30,000 feet. A pilot had a kind of deranged breakdown. On a JetBlue flight headed from New York to Las Vegas, the pilot started screaming about bombs, Al-Qaeda, and telling passengers to say their prayers. And what happened next was an all-American story of courage and quick thinking. Here's ABC's national affairs correspondent, Jim Avila.
A chaotic scene aboard JetBlue Flight 191, 3 hours into a trip from New York to Las Vegas. Passengers in the aisle, holding down not an unruly passenger, but the captain of the plane. In the cockpit, his co-pilot radioing an emergency, asking for an unscheduled immediate landing in Amarillo, Texas.
Amarillo, JetBlue 191, emergency.
John, can you give me a more specific nature of this medical emergency so I can pass it on to the ambulance crew?
Sources tell ABC News the captain, identified as Clayton Osborne of Georgia, was not at the controls, but began acting erratically, flipping switches in the cockpit and appearing confused. His co-pilot tricked him into going to the passenger compartment to check something out, and then locked the door, changing the security code behind him.
The one that should have all the credit is the co-pilot that was there. He changed the code on the door. He didn't let him back in.
A third JetBlue pilot, off duty and riding as a passenger, slipped into the cockpit to help with the controls. The captain, pacing the aisles now, eventually pounding on the cockpit door, trying to return to the flight deck, starting a panic among passengers.
Started banging on the door, kicking on the door, trying to get inside the cockpit. Before that, he actually started yelling, it's gonna blow up.
A flight attendant screamed for help, and as many as 5 passengers helped tackle the now shouting captain. Some saw him foaming at the mouth while yelling about Al-Qaeda, a bomb and threatening the plane is going down.
He started to curse at me and, trying to tell me, hey, you better pray, Iraq and Iran. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to show you what Iraq and Iran is. And I took him on a chokehold.
Dave Gonzalez, a former corrections officer from New York, brought him down with a chokehold.
I wasn't letting go of this guy until we landed the plane. I was still on top of this guy until we landed the plane.
Gonzalez and his fellow passengers held him down, first using plastic handcuffs, but he broke free of those, so passengers used their leather belts to tie his arms, all in plain view of cell phone camera rolling passengers. Upon landing, police boarded, talked to the co-pilot, and loaded the handcuffed captain onto a wheelchair and into an ambulance. It's not the first time airline crews have alarmed passengers. Just this month, an American Airlines flight attendant who said she was bipolar was restrained after threatening impending doom over the PA. The plane returned to the gate. Captain Osmond's Facebook page says he has been a JetBlue pilot and trainer since the year 2000, a commercial pilot since 1989. The FAA says he had an onboard medical emergency. The FBI is investigating the incident, and law enforcement sources say early indications are the experienced pilot had a panic attack. His wife, reached by ABC News, says she has not spoken to him but urges patience and asks everyone to remember there are two sides of the story. Diane?
All right, Jim Avila, still thinking of the using of the belts by those passengers to restrain him. I want to bring in ABC's aviation analyst, John Nance, who's also a veteran commercial airline pilot. So, John, what do you think of the quick thinking of this co-pilot?
It's something we want a co-pilot to do, and in this case, he acted very decisively, and it shows a tremendous amount of confidence that his company is going to stand behind him, and that's excellent.
And tell me about this screening, because we think back to the flight attendant, now the pilot. What kind of psychological screening is there, and does it work?
Diane, we have a lot of screening that goes on when anybody is hired, especially as a pilot, and it's very good until somebody is on the line for about a year and comes off probation. But then there's kind of a neural network in which everybody is, in effect, watching everybody else, not in a I'm suspicious of you form, but in terms of just knowing what's going on. That's one of the most effective methods, but maybe we need to look at ratcheting that up just a bit.
But that's still the best line of defense. I keep remembering that some pilots are trained to carry guns in the cockpit. Does that give you second thought about this?
No, not at all. And I'll tell you why. Not only do they go through yet another series of screenings, but there's also a lethal weapon in the cockpit. It's called a fire axe, and it's there for either pilot. So really, a presence or absence of a gun is not a material thing.
Well, we will be learning a lot more about this in the days to come. Two sides to every story, his wife said. Thank you, John Nance, for weighing in tonight. Now,
John Nance is a author and an American pilot. American as in the country. He has written quite a few books, and I just figured this out as we were watching this. This is the first time I saw this. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes. Again, I'll put a link. Brandon, you're not fat.
You're not fat, Brandon.
You're not fat, Brandon. Nice ad placement. Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes.
Starts.
Probably. Oh, you're so mean. But yeah, John Nance has written a bunch of books. If you take a look, Why Hospitals Should Fly, Final Approach, Orbit, Pandora's Clock, The Last Hostage, Blackout, Turbulence, Firefight. I mean, I can go on. This guy's written quite a few books, so maybe a good place to go check out some of those books. Buy them on Amazon or something and support this guy. He sounds like a pretty knowledgeable guy, that aviation expert that was on ABC News there. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes. But it goes back to what we were talking about. People are people. And I say it at the conclusion of every single episode that I've had since the very first one of this podcast. Take care of each other. We have to sit there and be kind. I fly with people, and I know you guys do too. We all do. We fly with people sometimes that they're quiet. Alex was saying he flew with the captain and goes, huh? So you like stuff? That should be the first sign that, continue to push and continue to talk gently, kindly to this person. Because again, we never know the battles that the person sitting next to you is fighting right now. So we need to be kind and sensitive and not be an ass to each other. And we need to, if we see something that's a flag, do something about it. Hey, is everything good? Are you good? We've talked about the WINGS program and EAP and having these phone numbers in your phone for just such an occasion might be important. Call your union rep if you're flying with someone and they're just like a little off or they're a little, I mean, there's no reason for it. If you don't want to be here, don't be here. Stay home. You know, and if you're struggling to the point, I mean, we've all have dozens of stories. You fly with somebody and you hear about a guy who was like, oh, well, I messed up in the simulator because, well, I just found out my wife is cheating on me and my kid's doing drugs. And it's like, whoa, what are you doing here? Why are you
doing
here?
at work right now?
You should not be here. You should be dealing with your shit and take the time off work if you have to, because although the training environment is a training environment, if you got the thumbs up and no one caught it and now you're out on the line dealing with all this baggage, trying to compartmentalize the battle you're fighting at home and fly an airplane, you're going to snap. Yeah.
Well, and so to the point on that is everybody learns to compartmentalize and do so differently, right? I being military, I've learned to compartmentalize and know how to, when you go on a deployment, like put literally everything that you've got going on in a box and leave it in that box until you get back home. You know, no different than when you go flying. Like, Tony, you know what's going on in my personal life right now. And I'm out here on the road and it's in a box waiting for me to deal with it when I get back home, you know, and that's kind of what you have to do. But there comes a point when that box overflows into the other box of your work and you can't handle it.
Yeah.
And it's how you recognize when your box or bucket or whatever you want to use as the analogy, right, gets overfilled and spills into the other bucket that you have. And you have to recognize that.
Yeah.
Like there's no one else that knows when you're getting overloaded better than you.
Yeah.
So, and most of us are type A plus personalities where we're not going to ask for help and we're not going to try to seek it when we're in a bind like that. And that's where I guess I have the issue is that we won't go ask for help.
Well, most men don't. They don't ask for directions, right?
What's directions? I know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah. Well, because we in general, we as men and most of us as more alpha personality or A-type personality, we as men, we will keep those internal struggles inside, and when asked about them, we'll say, well, I'm taking care of it. I'll handle it. And when we have those in our lives that recognize what we're doing and appreciate us for what we're doing to take care of it without a lot of fanfare and excuses and drama, then those individuals have the tools and the family and the support to keep the boxes separated, make sure they don't overflow, and then we're taken care of. Unfortunately, there are many of us out there that don't quite have that support. And I think it's those individuals that reach that tipping point, that refuse to recognize the situation, that snap. I mean,
I don't think that's 100% true. I think there's support out there, but just in other ways, you know what I mean? And a lot of times, you know, especially I say this a lot too, to some people that are going through hard times and stuff. I always tell them, look, you don't need to ask. I just need to know. You know what I mean? You know, you don't need to ask for help. I just need to know what's going on though. You know, and that way I can help whatever way I can. But if you don't communicate that, then I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, we have programs in our company, and you know,
it takes
law
courage.
Enforcement. It takes a lot of courage to come out and say that. And I do agree with that. And that's
yeah.
unfortunately, that's where people get hung up. But I wouldn't say it's not out there, because it's not helpless. There's always something you can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you just have to have the courage to stand up and use the resources you have, the tools you have, and don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that was what I was going to say is, Rob, you hit the nail on the head, though, is there is support out there. Trust me, there's support for everybody. They have those free apps now, or I wouldn't say free, but they have those apps of like where you can talk to a psychologist or whatever on an app. But you have to be willing to take that step to reach out. And that's where the people in our profession, like us, those A-type personalities that's what holds them back, is because then it's going to make me seem weak. Then it's going to make me,
they don't want to admit they have a problem. Yeah, for sure.
And I've gone through stuff in my personal life and my own struggles and stuff like that, and obviously dealt with stuff with growing up, stuff like that I've seen, that like sometimes it takes that momentary, like, hey, I'm really having this issue, like I need help. And you have to go seek somebody, you have to go talk to somebody, like it's just something that you have to do, otherwise your life is going to spiral out of control.
Yeah, we've all been there. I think
it sucks, but you're actually better in the long run, because you're going to become a better and stronger person because of dealing with your issues than you are if you don't, because then you're just going to get weak and succumb and then have issues like this, or you'll get arrested for being drunk on an airplane, or insert whatever here, right? Like like it's
you'll find ways to cope, and some of those ways to cope are very unhealthy. They usually are. So having that courage 95%. To ask, having that courage to ask. I mean, it's like we learn so much from children, and when you're young and something new is scary, but then the minute you do it, you're like, well, that wasn't that bad. I mean, you got to hang on to that through your adulthood. I mean, things are scary. You might not want to admit it, but when you finally get the ability, the courage, or the support that you want just by asking or saying, hey, I got this going on, can you help me out? I've never heard of anyone saying, no, sorry, I'm too busy. I mean, especially in this profession.
And that's the thing, is you have to be willing to ask. At the end of the day, you have to be willing to ask for help. And for anybody that's out there listening to the podcast that's struggling with something, like, please don't be afraid to hesitate to ask any one of us.
Absolutely.
I know I'm speaking for the three of you while I'm putting words in your mouth.
No, absolutely.
I know that you guys would do that, for me as well as you do it for anybody else. Like,
just reach out to the podcast. You find us on the website. At the end of every show, we tell you where you can find us. We absolutely, we're here for the betterment of aviation. That's why this podcast exists. We're here so that we can share our stories and the stories of our guests, so that we can inspire and encourage and support our fellow pilots out there, regardless of gender, race, whatever. We don't care. All we care is that if you have a passion for aviation, we want to help. And that's what this podcast is all about. So thank you, Alex. Yes, absolutely reach out to us. These are definitely stressful times. We've been talking about this. We have hundreds of pilots picketing right now, trying to tell that the companies that we work for, please listen to us. We need better working environments. Please listen to us, because something's going to happen if you don't. So someone, maybe not JetBlue. I know we did 2 articles on JetBlue, but maybe not JetBlue, but someone, somewhere,
somebody's going to bang up some metal somewhere.
Something's going to happen. And we don't want that. We want our careers, we want our companies that we work for to succeed, because when they succeed, we succeed. The profession succeeds. The industry succeeds. We all are on the same page. We just need to focus that energy to boost each other up and to take care of each other. Speaking of stress, last and final thing that we want to talk about, obviously, we're recording this at the beginning of September, 21 years ago. a very stressful thing happen. We're approaching the 21st anniversary again here of 9/11. Now, last year we did a very special show. It was a 3-hour-long show. We interviewed 6 captains that were flying. And to this day on YouTube, one of the more popular videos that have been posted for the Squawk Ident podcast are those independent interviews of the pilots. I mentioned that I saw Captain Hans, in Dallas at the layover. He was one of the captains I interviewed 9/11 to see what he was doing, where he was flying, how it affected his life. And it affected his life both in positive and in negative ways, as I think it affected all of us in one way or another. The interview I did with Bill Evans, another just wonderful interview. I'm just getting choked up thinking about it. 9/11 was a major event for this country, not just our industry. And we're coming up on the anniversary. How do we honor that without just glassing it over with another national holiday? I mean, the other day they had a national movie night. Hey, that's great. Do not make 9/11 as insignificant as some of these national holidays that are being created and generated every other day. It seems like there's some kind of national event, National Cake Day, National, Grandmother's Day. 9/11 is huge. It changed the course of this entire world. So how are you going to spend the day? Guys, do you have any plans? Are you flying?
I'm flying.
I'm working. I'm doing actually, but hey, listen, that's a great way to, honor the day, is to be working, business as usual. On a day where people tried to stop us from doing business as usual. You know what I mean? So, that's a just good way to go, back at you and get back to work, and it'd be, I don't know, be kind of cool to be able to be in, like New York or something on that day to go see the memorial, the fountain, what do they call it? Fountain, the ponds. I forget the actual term they use. But those are very solemn place, you to just stand in the footprint of the buildings there, and you're like, wow, this
Alex,
is ground zero where it all happened.
Have you been to Ground Zero at the museum?
Yeah,
I have
it's
not.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think I should be sorry.
Yet.
No, I know I've been there. I used to be based in New York, so I've spent more than a few trips down there, just spending some quiet time down there, looking at all those names on the marble around the ponds, and just looking up and looking at Freedom Tower and seeing how beautiful that tower is and what it represents.
Actually, that brings back a good memory too. Is I was just in New York maybe 2 weeks ago, and you look at the New York skyline and all the towers that are popping up.
Oh, the new ones, yeah.
The new ones, and they were all obviously developed and engineered, and in honor of the Twin Towers that went down, World Trade Center. And you look at the New York skyline, and it's just, for that moment in time, it's awesome, because you're like, wow, look, here's where we, look where we came from and look where we are now. Yeah. And it just goes to show you how, 9/11 really, really, rallied up the country. It was the lowest point of the country's time, but it was also the beginning of one of the greatest time of our country, where people just all came together and stood behind the flag and got behind USA, and everything was great. And it's kind of sad to see through all the political stuff that's been going on and things that have been going on in the world and everything, how we've really started to kind of go separate ways. But I hope that it doesn't take another 9/11 to rally the country back behind the flag, because we need it. I mean, we really need it now. I think I'm probably going off in a bad tangent here, but that's the one thing that sticks out of my mind about 9/11 wasn't so much the tragedy of the situation, which was obviously very tragic, and it's something you never want to experience again. But I did like the how the country rebounded, and what, especially, New Yorkers and stuff like that, how they all came together. And, once the country saw that through all the television and news outlets and stuff like that, I think you had no, it was very easy to get behind them and do the same thing in your own community. And it spread throughout the country, and it was really awesome. So that's how I'm going to remember it, is just, we came together as a country.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have memories of it because obviously I'm a lot younger than you two gentlemen. Not by much, but I was a freshman in high school when it happened.
Yeah.
So and my dad was flying the 7.5 and 7.6 at the time when it happened.
Yeah.
So, and I believe, if memory serves me correctly, he got off of a trip coming back from Boston a few days prior to 9/11. So
wow.
timing in the wrong direction, that could have been my father. Right. And for me, like, I remember that, Rob. I remember the country just banding together. It didn't matter what you were an American.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you were American, right?
Yeah.
That, like,
yep,
we came together as a country, united, not divided. And it sucks to kind of have that mindset of, like, we need something like that to band this country together again, because we're at another low point. And I don't want to have a 9/11 happen. I don't want to have a bad event happen. But like the camaraderie, the American resolve after 9/11 was on par with that after the Japanese attacking, in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did we do? Like, we came and we annihilated. No different than same with the 9/11. We came and we annihilated. Like, we've
seen it twice.
People.
Yeah, have you seen it twice pretty much in, the last 100 years? Yeah. One was, World War II,
47,
after
46, 45.
Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Everybody went to work, and, Rosie the Riveter went to work, and, putting the airplanes together in the factories, and everybody, turned in their pots and pans for metal so they could build the war machines, and the car factories turned into airplane factories. That was huge. And then obviously the next one was what we were just talking about, was 9/11.
Didn't matter who you were, right? And when World War II happened, everybody went for the betterment of the country, And that's kind of the same thing that happened in 9/11. Didn't matter who you were. Everything at that point went to the betterment of the country.
And I think the difference between the pandemic and, say, 9/11, World War II, or Pearl Harbor is that with the betterment of the country or the world, we've become very divided in our ideas and our theory on what the best way to get through this pandemic. And we've become the maskers versus the non-maskers, the left versus the right, and it's just become so divided in this country. And what it's so hard to do is to remind people that all we have is each other. We got to take care of each other. And we have these tragedies that have happened in our lives. And what's the best way to move forward and to honor and remember those tragedies, and not just make them another day, another holiday. And that's the whole point, I think, is that when you honor, do something to honor it. Don't just say, oh yeah, it's not, move on. Like, I'll be flying that day, a pretty long day actually, Phoenix to LA, Honolulu that day, if my schedule hangs through. And that's going to be a very sobering day for me. Yeah. It's always touched me very much. I don't know if people have noticed the cover art from a year ago on that special that we did. That's me, 3 years old, sitting there in front of the Twin Towers. Being grown up in the East Coast like I did when I was very young, take many trips to New York as a kid, and it was always a must see, the Statue of Liberty and the Twin Towers.
And I'm looking at my schedule here. It's pretty. It just dawned on me where I will be. Baltimore. I'll probably be down by Baltimore Harbor, where another legendary event happened in our country's history. Francis Scott Key wrote Star Spangled Banner, looking over Baltimore Harbor, as the bombs bursted in there over, I forget, Fort McKinley, I think it was. So
it was either Fort McKinley or Fort Sumter.
Yeah, I think it was Fort Sumter. Yeah. Sorry, that's old dusty U.S. history there, but yeah, I mean, boom.
That's
there
a
you
great
go.
story too.
Yeah,
like that whole story of him writing that, because the shellacking that they were taking, and again, the American resolve. Basically, they were told, like, if you guys just take down the flag, everything will stop.
Yep.
And throughout the night, they got bombed and bombed.
And you can go to the Smithsonian to this day and look and almost touch. They won't let you touch it, but you can see the actual flag.
Really?
That was there.
Oh.
Yep. It is amazing, and it's it's under special lighting because of the UV rays and everything, so it's a really dark room. But yeah, you could see all the cannonball shell holes through it, and bullet holes or whatever.
I gotta check that out.
Tatted,
next time I do a DC
it's really
layover.
cool, man.
Yeah.
So if you get to do the DC Smithsonian thing, go to the Museum of American History, and I think that's where it is. So,
but that cool. Again, that just goes back to the American resolve that we didn't want to give up to the British, and we still kept it
up.
And
a lot of great stuff about September 11th in that museum too.
I can't remember the last time, the age wise, I was in New York, but I had to be like maybe 10, 11. When did Titanic come out? Because that's what I can base it off.
Yeah, that was definitely in the 80s or 90s.
So it was whenever Titanic came out, and the whole country was in the whole Titanic, like, because my dad had, it was
1997.
This was back on the long days where you had like 2 or 3 day layovers,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1997.
So he had
Catch Me Rose.
He had a layover in New York, and then he had to leave, and then literally came back to New York the next, like the following day. So my mom and I went with him for like, I think it was like 5 days in New York, and one of those days was without my dad, and it had to be in the late 90s. The only reason why I remember that is because there was a Titanic play that my mom and I went to go see. It was an off-Broadway play. It sucked miserably, but the only reason is just because Titanic fever was sweeping the country. That's the only reason why I remember that. But that was the last time I was in New York. So
yeah. So you need to go back. Pick up some trips,
that was
man.
The only building that I never got to go up on was the World Trade. We did the Statue of Liberties. We did the Empire State. You go out to Staten or to Ellis Island and to the Statue of Liberty, and you get your iconic picture of the skyline in the background.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's where I was when I had that picture taken of me when I was with my mom, 3 years old.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, well, the final article here I'll quote from is from Parade.com. The most powerful quotes remembering 9/11 on the 21st anniversary. On the upcoming 21st anniversary of 9/11, we always vow never to forget. On September 11, 2001, almost 3,000 people lost their lives during the attacks at the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and aboard United Airlines Flight 93. At 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time, American Flight 11, traveling from Boston to Los Angeles, hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. At 9:03 a.m. Eastern Time, United Airlines Flight 175, traveling from Boston to Los Angeles, hit the South Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. At 9:37 a.m. Eastern Time, American Airlines Flight 77, traveling from Dulles, Virginia to Los Angeles, hit the Pentagon Building in Washington. And at 10:03 a.m. Eastern Time, United Airlines Flight 93, traveling from Newark to New Jersey, United Airlines Flight 93, traveling from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco, crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Around the country, people paused to remember those who lost their lives on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, vowing never to forget. Many find solace in 9/11 quotes and 9/11 memorial quotes. This year, on the 21st anniversary of September 11's tragedy, remember and reflect with these powerful 9/11 quotes. And I'll put a link in the show notes because these are pretty cool to kind of look through and read and remember. My favorite from President Obama in a 2011 radio address. And that's when he said,
"Even the smallest act of service, the simplest act of kindness, is a way to honor those we lost, a way to reclaim that spirit of unity that followed 9/11.
So as we approach the 21st anniversary of 9/11, think about that. What can you do? What can be said? What act of service, no matter how small, can you provide to help honor those that lost their lives on 9/11? Very important to us as airline pilots and as aviators in the country and as Americans. And we know you're going to do your best, and we're very proud of you for doing so.
I know that it's actually pretty scary that we live in a world now that the kids now are just realizing that 9/11, is a thing of the past instead of people growing up through it.
Yeah.
Like they just read about it in history books now, which is
their thing is like the COVID-19 right now. That's all they have. But and that was bad too, but it was bad in different ways. People lost jobs and I know people got sick and died, but I feel like that was blown out of proportion too, because I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say it that way, but people were dying of the flu and everything. You got this monkeypox thing now. All of a sudden everybody's a monkeypox expert. It's like it just happened. How can you be an expert? And I think it's a social media thing, but I can go off on a tangent that way. But
yeah, you don't want to go there.
I know I will not be getting.
You can direct your hate mail to Rob D at.
But anyway, I forgot where I was going. I was getting way off track there, but
well, September 11th is now old enough to order its own beer, so we should all have a beer in memorial for 9/11.
And that
definitely,
I will. I promise you that I will definitely have a cold one on September 11th and raise a glass. Well, we hope that you enjoyed this episode of Squawk Ident Podcast. I want to just say thank you again to Rob D and Alex D Pilot for joining us today. Alex, thank you so much for your input. Rob, yours as well. Always a pleasure to sit down and talk shop with you gentlemen. And we hope that you enjoyed listening to our flight today. If you did, would you please pay it forward and share this podcast with a friend or maybe online to some of your friends online and just help get the word out that Squawk Ident Podcast is here. Make sure you subscribe or follow to the Squawk Ident Podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. We also love receiving listener feedback, so keep those coming. You can do that through email or even with an audio feedback via our website at avoidantony.com. That's Alpha Victor, the number 8, Romeo Tango Oscar number Yankee.com. You can also help us with the production of this podcast by sending a couple bucks our way. You can do that right there from the homepage and just click on the link. It's just that easy. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram users can also find us under Squawk Ident Podcast. Just want to say again, one final thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen to these grateful aviators. Keep the dirty side down out there. Be safe and take care of each other. Bye, y'all.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Meow.
Oh God, don't start that.
Meow.
Was that the guard cat?
Bad enough hearing that on guard.
Meow.
Hey, where is he? Where is he? You're on guard.
There he is.
Guard.
Time ago, I wouldn't know anything about it.
Do you know anything about planes? Do you know anything about planes?
Can you fly this airplane and land it?
No, not a chance. No, not a chance. No, not a chance.
Roger. Huh? Roger. Huh? Request vector. Over. What?
Do you know anything about planes?
Clearance, Clarence. Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor? soon can you land?
I can't tell.
You can tell me, I'm a doctor.
No, I mean, I'm just not sure.
Do you know anything about planes?
Can you fly this plane and land it?
It's an entirely different kind of flying.